Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Let's Watch Assholes Push Their Political Agendas. Breaking Badger News. That other thing is actually something that we're toying with. Look, all jokes aside, let me just introduce my panelists. Obviously, to my abstract left, I got Allison Tiemann. To my abstract right, I got Hannah Wallen. And we're here to talk about something pretty serious today, obviously. I'm sure we're all aware of what's happened in Las Vegas last night. At least 59 people are dead, and over 500 people are injured at the hands of a 64-year-old gunman named Stephen Paddock. On the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, Paddock smashed the window of his hotel room and opened fire on a crowd of concertgoers below. And it seemed that he opened fire for a period of time yet to be determined. Some say 5 minutes, others say 15 minutes, we don't know. And then sometime shortly after committed suicide before police entered his room. Concertgoers were initially confused, thinking pyrotechnics were malfunctioning. And I can understand if you watch any of the footage for what happened, you can see why people might think that. It seemed pretty quiet, especially, following something like gunfire initially. And it was only after roughly 10 seconds that people realized what was going on and started to run to safety. What's interesting is that Paddock had at least 10 rifles in his hotel room. And I have no idea how he managed to get all that past security, because apparently none of the staff reported seeing anything suspicious in his room when, they entered and started cleaning it, or even when they passed him in the hallways. People are still trying to determine a motive. People like, or organizations like ISIS and the Melbourne Antifa Facebook page have claimed responsibility, although, police investigations and, in some respects, common sense determine that this isn't true. All that is known about Paddock right now is that he was an accountant, he was a wealthy property owner, and spent a lot of time in Las Vegas casinos. In particular, he liked to play high-stakes poker games, where at least $100 had to be played each round by each participant. And Paddock's brother Eric says he wasn't aware of any financial difficulties that his brother may or may not have been experiencing, so that kind of, I don't know, I'm not sure if it rules it out, but it's something to consider. Although neighbors of Stephen Paddock have said that he made his living gambling. And at one time, he begged to one of his neighbors about winning $20,000 in a high-stakes poker game on his phone. So that's the kind of person that he was. So, Allison, prior to recording this, you were just telling me something about 4chan and how they were involved in all this.
First, before we get into 4chan, I wanted to bring up a few additional items related to this. First of all, the people at HoneyBadgerRadio extend our deepest condolences to everyone who's dealing with this situation.
Oh, of course, yeah.
What more can you say? It's horrendous. So, some more information about the Vegas gunman. Apparently, his father was a sociopath who was on the FBI's most wanted list as a bank robber, and not the nice kind of bank robber. And just to go down and talk about 4chan. Now, first of all, nobody endorses 4chan as anything but the truly a hive of scum and villainy and general mendacity and trollishness. I just was surprised that the media didn't know that 4chan did actually identify the guy. And right now they're looking at potential evidence that he was anti-Trump, but like I said, this is 4chan. you can't even trust them when you say that he's from Earth.
Last night I watched them conclude that the shooter was the ex-husband, who they didn't know was an ex, of the woman the FBI was looking for. And that's why the media was reporting that they had the wrong guy, because initially they had the wrong guy. And there was no question until it came out who it actually was. And there's been instances where they've helped to find suspects. There's been instances where they've managed to correctly identify suspects. But when they don't consider possibilities that they should be considering, it basically makes weaponized autism entirely useless. So yeah, 4chan really, really fucked it up last night.
Yeah. But on the other hand, when you look at the mainstream media, for some reason they seem to be fascinated by Trump's sort of generic tweet about this issue, and saying that he doesn't tweet enough, or he didn't tweet enough about this because it was white people being shot by another white person and not Muslim terrorism. So they're already condemning the president for his response to this, even though nobody knows why this guy did it. There's no obvious motive, unless you want to say that he didn't like country music, which...
Well, actually, they're going to condemn the president no matter what he did. If you look at the Salon article, the first thing they did was condemn the president for having spoken too soon regarding other tragedies. And so now they're condemning the president for taking too long to speak about this one. They condemned the president for being too specific about other tragedies and are now condemning the president for being not specific enough about this one. Obviously, regardless of what he had done, there would have been some degree of condemnation.
Can we just condemn it?
Yeah, can we just condemn it and not be pushing all these different narratives? 4chan. I mean, what do you expect from 4chan? Seriously.
No, I mean, with regard to the president, he would, no matter what statement he made, he could have come out and said anything. There is not a combination of words the president could have tweeted or stated or not stated, if he'd have been entirely silent, that the media would have been satisfied with, that are criticizing him for what he said.
Even if he tweeted F white supremacy,
yeah,
people would still be criticizing him.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah,
well, they would be saying that that's just a cover for...
Or
but
inappropriate
like I said,
language for the president.
This is a lot of narrative pushing on very few facts, and that's a little bit deplorable. And
I don't understand some people. Like, when they read the headlines, worst mass shooting in U.S. history, at least in modern history, how can people's minds immediately jump to just, like, obviously, we want to figure out why the guy did what he did so we can extend the conversation beyond that, but we don't even know that. Can we just act like human beings for like 10 bloody seconds? Especially if you watch the footage from this event, it's the most horrifying thing, and just hearing people crying out in despair. Even when I was watching the TV this morning, I'm not particularly prone to being emotionally moved by stuff I watch on television. That's partially due to the fact that I have high-functioning autism. But even when I was just watching some stories about people that are getting text messages and calls from family members and friends that were at this event, and just the emotions on their faces, it's the most terrifying thing. And people, they can't even, for a moment, embrace the humanity that they should be in a situation like this,
and just set aside the narrative. Yeah, that's, well, I think you know what? I think here at HoneyBadger Radio, we set a gold standard for not jumping to conclusions and trying to look at the facts before we make a decision. We've done that with lots of different things, including the Cologne situation, which
got us
criticized heavily.
How dare you not jump to conclusions?
But, you know, we've not jumped to conclusions in many different circumstances besides that. And just to speak to what Max was saying about the humanity of the event, I just want to point something out. A story that really caught my eye. There was a nurse from Tennessee who died. His name was Sonny Melton, and he was fatally gunned down while he was protecting his wife, Heather, from a hail of bullets. And I just wanted to talk maybe a bit more about the human tragedy of all of this.
Yeah, please.
And Sonny Milton was a registered nurse. His wife was an orthopedic surgeon. And this is what she has to say. "He saved my life," Heather Gullish Melton told USA Today. "He grabbed me from behind and started running when I felt him get shot in the back. At this point, I'm in complete disbelief and despair. I don't know what to say. Sonny was the most kind-hearted, loving man I've ever met." Sonny, she added in a statement to the radio station WCYB. And, I mean, we struggle with stories like this on HoneyBadger Radio because we don't want to... There was a situation with the Batman shooting where a man panicked and ran and left his girlfriend, and he was dragged through the coals in the media for doing it, because everyone knows a man is supposed to protect his woman. And there's a fine line
here. And they didn't tell
here.
the whole story there either, if I remember correctly. Part of the reason he ran was because he thought she was running, and he was running with her.
Yeah, but they just skewered him, and in trying to condemn that kind of behavior, blaming a man for running, I think we also need to honor the fact that this man did save his wife's life. And he acted completely selflessly and instinctively in a completely selfless way. And I also want to add that it's, like I said, it's such a fine line, because I don't want men to feel like ashamed if they do find themselves in a situation where their instincts for self-preservation take over, or the confusion takes over, and they don't act in a way that the media would call heroic and acceptable. But at the same time, as I want to recognize that what Sonny did is actually an aspect of being a man, and not being a man like the social role. It's an aspect of that wonderful thing called testosterone, and its effect not just on men, but all social male mammals will insert themselves between danger and their social group. It's an instinctive pattern of behavior. And it's not to say that women don't do it, because they do it. It's just that it's more prevalent among men. And you can see this with Sonny sacrifice. You can see it with people who are the men who went down to help people in the hurricanes in the South. You see it whenever a man just jumps into a river to save someone who's been swept away without a thought.
And there were actually 3 men in Aurora who died protecting their loved ones in that situation as well.
Yeah. So at the same time as I do not want to shame men if, for whatever reason, they get panicked or they get confused, but while recognizing that this is something that men do, and men predominantly do.
I think a good way to explain it is, when something like this happens, this isn't something that necessarily men owe society. It's not something that society has any right to demand of men or expect of men. But it is a kindness and an act of heroism and a selflessness that, when it happens, should be celebrated every time.
Yeah,
and
appreciated. The other thing I want to add is society doesn't, this is not something that society makes men do. If anything, society gets in the way of the innate gentleness and selflessness of men. And I just want to leave it at that. I have nothing more to say, because this is a tragedy, and I don't want to...
Yeah, I think it'll be best if we just end this now, but I want to end it by just solidifying what Allison just finished saying. You can't blame men in impossible situations for doing impossible things. But I will say this, for men like Sonny, who make that ultimate sacrifice for somebody that they love, it's people like you that... it's people like you that give people who are looking on the outside in some hope in humanity and the power to continue on. So you will be remembered, Sonny, for that. And obviously, as we move on from this, we'll keep you guys all updated on this particular story as more information comes out. I'm sure we'll be discussing this on tomorrow's Polecast. If you like this particular video, give it a like. You know the drill. Subscribe. I want to thank Allison and Hannah for doing this with me on such short notice. And guys, as we sign out, I just want to ask that you give your loved ones, a call or a hug tonight, wherever they may be. Adios.